بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه الطيبين الطاهرين أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. I bear witness that no one deserves to be worshipped except Allah, and that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. وأسأل الله تبارك وتعالى أن يرزقنا حسن النية. Thereafter, know that the topic of becoming pubescent is a very important topic. For parents, it's very, very important to learn so that they can monitor their children. And likewise, for children who are of an age that is about 9 or 10 onwards, it's important for them to monitor this particular issue. Why is that? Because the Prophet ﷺ said, رُفِعَ الْقَلَمُ عَنْ ثَلَاثٍ. He mentioned that the pen of the angels with which the angels write things down, this pen is lifted, meaning that it is not writing down the potential sinful acts that they are committing. So if a child does something that is actually haram, this child who is not بالغ, not pubescent, is nabaligh, this child's sins will not be written down because they are not mukallaf, they are not accountable. So it's important that a person knows at which point do I now start being accountable for the sinful acts or sayings that I am doing. So this is a very important issue. A father, a guardian, he is obligated to teach his child. The child that becomes 7 lunar years, so not 7 solar years like we now usually, we go by solar years, okay, 365 days or whatever exactly it is. This is what we usually go by nowadays, but Islamically we go by the moon, don't we? This is why we look for the hilal every 29, for example, every 28 days. So the month would either be 29 days or it would be 30 days. And so after the 29th, we would go and look for the moon. We go by the moon. So in terms of years, we go by the moon years. Now, the moon, the years are less in terms of days than the sun. So when we say 7 lunar years, what we do is we are referring to a time at which if this child reaches 7 lunar years and is mentally discriminate, has tamyiz meaning that the child is able to differentiate between certain matters, then here it is obligatory upon the father to teach the child the personal obligatory knowledge and order the child to pray and fast if the child can bear that. Likewise, the child, it reaches a certain point after which it becomes pubescent. And it's important for it to know these situations. So let's start off with the males. Now, these issues are issues of personal obligatory knowledge. This issue, it is an issue which it needs to be known, because not knowing it would then be not knowing when it is obligatory, fard upon a person to pray. Because a child who is 6 years old or 8 years old, it is not fard upon them to pray. If they pray, then they're getting into the habit of praying, yes. And as a father or a mother, you are obligated. It is fard upon you to order them to pray. But as for the child, let's say they didn't pray, they would not be sinful. But then if they reach 10 years old and they are nabaligh also, they are not pubescent, then you would have to discipline them for not praying. But when is it that if the child, if it reaches a certain point in its life, when is it that now it has to pray? Meaning that it's no longer a child, meaning that it's become a pubescent, accountable person, mukallaf. When is that? That's what we're going to discuss. So if there is a male, if there is a boy who reaches the age of 15 lunar years, who reaches the age of 15 lunar years, then this is about maybe 14 and a half in our normal years nowadays. If the male reaches these 15 lunar years, lunar meaning by the moon, then this child becomes pubescent. This child becomes pubescent. If none of the other matters that we're going to mention occur for the male or the female, in terms of the male, it's one other matter. If that one other matter does not occur, then if the child reaches 15 lunar years, then it becomes pubescent. It is obligatory upon the child to pray. It is obligatory upon this person now, who is no longer a child, who is now a man, to attend al-Jumu'ah. It is obligatory to fast, such that if this person now does not pray the obligatory prayer, the fard prayer, does not pray the wajib prayer, does not fast the fasts of Ramadan that are fard, then this person will be a major sinner. This is a kabira. This person, even if they are just 15 lunar years, they are now pubescent. This boy is now a man. And if he misses an obligatory prayer now, then he deserves the punishment of Allah. He is mustahiq of azab Allah finnar, because he missed an obligatory prayer. Before, when he was younger and was not pubescent, he would not be deserving of the punishment of Allah, because he was not accountable. The pen was lifted. The angels were not writing the sins down. But now that this child has become 15 lunar years of age, the child, because it has become 15 lunar years of age, is now an accountable person, considered a grown-up. So let's say that this boy, let's say your son, for example, he's not yet 15 lunar years. Let's say he is 9 years old. So when he becomes 9 years old, it is now possible that this second thing that we're going to mention will happen between 9 lunar years of this side, between 9 lunar years and 15 lunar years. In these years, it's possible that something will happen that will make him بالغ, pubescent, even before reaching 15. So he might be at 9 lunar years and a day. Something might happen that we're going to mention now that may make him بالغ, may make him pubescent. So he would be a grown-up then. It might happen at 10. It might happen at 11, 12, 13, 14. If it doesn't happen, this thing that I'm going to mention, if it doesn't happen and the child becomes 15 lunar years, then he is بالغ. Then he is accountable. He is pubescent, given the other conditions of accountability. So, what is this second matter? The second matter is if the mani of the boy exits. What do we mean by mani? Now, firstly, I want to give a short introduction. Do you know these sessions of religious knowledge where we mention the name of Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, who was the best of teachers, and he alayhi salatu wasalam was blessed, and he alayhi salatu wasalam taught his sahaba. He taught the women, the Sahabiyat, and he taught the men, the Sahaba, the rules of the religion, details about al-istinja, details about a husband and a wife. If they are intimate, a husband and a wife, then what they need to do, they need to make ghusl. And he mentioned situations of when they need to make ghusl and when they don't have to. He mentioned these details. Some of the Sahabiyat, they came to the Prophet ﷺ and they asked him about if they need to make ghusl. If this woman, this Sahabiyah radiyallahu anha, she was not shy, because it's not good to be shy when you need to ask a religious question, because you don't want to fall into a sin. So she was not shy. She asked him about something to do with her monthly cycle, with her menstruation. So she asked the Prophet ﷺ, and he answered her. He answered her ﷺ about what she needs to do. So this is an issue that we should not be shy of. We should not shy away from. This is an issue that we can mention in respectful terms. We can mention in a way that we would not be doing something dishonorable. In a way, in a sensible way, because it needs to be mentioned. Otherwise, do you know what happens? When people don't mention these things, then there will be a lesson like this, and we might have many people that say, well, I've never heard this information before. Why? Because it's possible that some of the elder people, they were shy about mentioning these issues. And we are mentioning them in a very respectful manner, with adab and akhlaq, just as the Prophet ﷺ mentioned to us. So if some words are mentioned that have an appropriate meaning, then we should not shy away from that, because sometimes if you're not very clear, if you don't say things clearly, other people don't understand. And they might then misunderstand, and that might cause them to do something haram. So this second matter that makes the male pubescent is the khurujul mani, is the exiting of al-mani. So al-mani, it is something that exists in both males and females. And it refers to specifically the fluid that exits from the male during sexual intercourse. This is the sexual fluid, the spermatic fluid that exits from the male. It is known as al-mani. The scholars, they spoke about this because the man needs to know about these issues. He needs to know the difference between the things that come out of the private part. Does he need to do istinja because of them? Or does he need to do a full ghusl? What does he need to do? Because there are three types of things that come out of the male private part. They are al-mani, one of them. Then there is al-madhi, a second matter. And then al-wadi. So al-mani, al-wadi, and al-wadi. These are three things that come out of the male private part, other than a fourth thing that is al-bawl, which is urine. Now we know that if urine comes out, then this is cleaned by al-istinja. And a person, every time they go to the bathroom to urinate, they don't need to do ghusl, do they? No, they don't need to do a full ghusl, no. So when urine comes out, a person, what he does is, a male, he would clean that area with al-istinja. Now, as for al-mani, when this comes out, then a person needs to perform al-ghusl. As for al-wadi and al-wadi, these two, they are not urine and they are not mani. Sometimes these things, they come out. One of these things comes out when a person lifts something heavy. When a male, if he lifts something heavy, sometimes something might come out of his private part. It's not urine, and it's usually not mani. It's usually, it can be al-wadi. Also, this can come out when a male has intimate relations with his wife. When he is alone with his wife, this will, al-wathi, it will exit. And it is different to al-mani. We'll mention more details about al-mani now. But al-wathi, it comes out at a different point, at a different stage. And this requires al-istinja alone. This al-wathi requires al-istinja. So far, al-bawl, which is urine, requires al-istinja. If it exits, you perform al-istinja only, not ghusl. Likewise, if wathi comes out, which comes out at sexual excitement for the male, if this comes out only, then a person performs al-istinja. And if al-wadi comes out, al-wadi, it is when a person urinates, it might come out, it is thick. It might come out before urine or after urine. This also is cleaned through al-istinja. Anyway, there are more details to this. So you see the importance of religious knowledge. We will come back to speaking about al-mani though. But you notice here that the husband, the father, and even the young boy, even the young man, the 15, 16, 17-year-old who is not married, even he needs to know these details. He needs to know these details so that he can be tahir, so that he doesn't have najasat on him, so that he doesn't have something on him that is napak, because then his prayer, it would be in question. How would he pray with something napak on him, something najis on him? So a person who is between 9 and 15 years old, if he sees his mani, if it comes out, this would sometimes happen when a boy is asleep. A 10-year-old might be asleep, and a 13-year-old might be asleep, and he has what is known as a wet dream. In other words, nocturnal emission, where this fluid, it comes out of his front private part. And it comes out from the head of the male organ as normal as urine would. And there are 3 ways that it is known. Because sometimes what might happen, sometimes your son might be asleep and he wakes up and he finds something that is wet on his underwear. He finds that, and he doesn't know what it is. Now, if he's learned the religious knowledge, if his father has taught him, or his ustadh, whom the father takes him to, has taught him what mani is and what might happen so that he knows that he becomes balgh. If his father has taught him, then the child will know that he will know whether it is urine, or it is mani, or it is wathi, or wadi. He will know what it is. Why? Because mani has certain characteristics. So al-mani, when it exits, sometimes it exits in strong sprouts, or the spurts. The scholars, they said that yakhruju bit-tadaffuq. It comes out in spurts, bit after bit. So not like urine. Urine comes out all at once. But this, it comes out in spurts. And also the scholars said that it's exiting, when mani comes out, it comes out with pleasure. It's accompanied by enjoyment. Something that for a male would feel good. And after this, after it comes out, a person's desire, a person's ladhat would decrease, would weaken. This is what mani is. So your son should know that if something comes out of his private part, it comes out in spurts usually, not always. And if it was accompanied by pleasure, when urine comes out, a person doesn't feel pleasure, a person feels relief. As for a male out of whom mani exits, this would be accompanied by pleasure, and then after that it would be followed by temporary weakness in desire. Also, sometimes what happens is, if your son was to see on his underwear a fluid or a liquid, or something that wasn't there before he slept. Now, it might have happened early in the night, so it might have dried, or it might still be wet. So the scholars said when it is moist, mani, when it has rutuba, when it is wet, then it smells like dough. It smells like dough, which is like जेल्लै आटा गुन्नने होना ते आटा सेरने होना ओह् जेह्ड़ी होनी ना खुशबू जेह्ड़ी बो होनी ऐ उसकी आखने dough. So that dough which is wet, so not dry flour, the dough that is wet, this is what wet mani smells like. So you should teach your son that if ever this happens, then he would check. Or if it dries, because sometimes what your son might find is on his underwear, he might find something that is white in color. So not urine, and it's dried. So what does he need to do now? He needs to check. He needs to check it. When mani dries, it smells like egg white. It smells like egg white. When you crack an egg open and you find the orange part and the white, that white part, this is what mani smells like when it is dry. So he would know these are ways in which he can identify mani. So if he is 12 years old and this happens to him, and he knows that he hasn't wet the bed, because many of the young, if they're not taught properly, they might think that they've wet the bed. They might think that they've peed in the bed, which they haven't urinated in the bed. This is because they've become pubescent. Now, for a male, it's important to know, you must teach your child that just growing facial hair, this does not make one pubescent. Just because one has now a mustache, this doesn't make a child baligh. Likewise, if a child, if a male starts to get facial hair, meaning on the beard area, if he starts to get hair here, this does not mean that he's pubescent. It means he's close, but it doesn't mean he's pubescent. If he gets hair under his armpits, or if he gets hair around his private parts, then this does not mean that he's baligh. No. Either he reaches 15 years, lunar years, or his mani exits, his sexual fluid exits. This would make him baligh, and not his facial hair or hair on other parts of the body. This is a sign, however, that it's close. But by that, you wouldn't say that he's baligh now. No. Likewise, if the body odor of a child changes, because for boys this is more apparent. If the body odor of the child, it changes, so he smells more like a man. He might even say that I smell more like my dad, in one sense. Not that his dad smells bad, but he smells more manly. His body changes, even his sweat, it might change, and his odor becomes different to that what it was. This is not this does not mean that the child is pubescent. Rather, it means that he is close to pubescence. And for the females, just so that we can mention both, for a female, your daughter, she needs to know that if she reaches 15 lunar years, then she is pubescent. She is considered baligha. Okay? But let's say she's not 15 yet, and a similar thing happens to her, where she finds on her inner clothing, she finds mani, she finds this sexual fluid. It might come out of her private part. If this happens, then, and it's the same that if it comes out, it would come out most likely in spurts, okay, bit after bit, not like one would urinate, and it would be accompanied by pleasure if it does come out. So if this happens before 15, so between 9 and 15, then she is considered to be pubescent. So one's daughter needs to be told, do you know why? If you don't teach your daughter this, then you have not met you have not met the obligation of teaching your children about what bulugh is, what pubescence is, because that's the turning point. That's when they become accountable. And because of your shortcoming, because you fell short, your child might not know that they've now become a man or a woman. And they don't know now, if they miss prayers, for example, they don't know that they're being sinful. They don't know that they are obligated to pray. They don't know, and they don't know that they have to make al-ghusl, and they don't know they have. So this is important. Okay, so don't fall short, because they can't meet their huquq that they have. Allah has huquq upon al-ibad, that they worship Him. So how are your children going to fulfill that worship if they don't know that they are baligh? Okay, so she needs to be taught about this issue, that if mani exits, then she becomes baligha. Or, for example, the third issue that's present in females and not in males is menses. If she starts to menstruate, this can occur from the age of 9, exactly 9, up to whenever. But this can start from 9 years of age, exactly 9, not a day less. Okay? Exactly 9. What is menses? What is menstruation? This is blood that naturally exits from the female private part, the front private part. So it exits at a time which is considered menses. So this time, if it's, for example, if she sees blood coming from her private part at 8 years of age, and let's say 3 days before she becomes 9 years old, this would not be considered menses. This is considered blood of illness. She performs istinja, that's it. But if she becomes 9 lunar years old and she sees the blood of menses, she sees blood coming out of her front private part, then she becomes pubescent. She becomes baligha. 9 years exactly. Some women, they might not menstruate, but for those that do, it is considered menses if it occurs at that particular time. There is a difference among the scholars with regards to when menses can first occur. But we say, the Hanafis, we say that it is at exactly 9 years. It can start then, not a day before. So whichever one of these three happens for the female, if her menses occurs, or she sees her sexual fluid, or these two don't happen and she becomes 15, that's it, she's baligha. She becomes pubescent. So let us remember these issues. These are important issues because our children, your children, they need to know when they are pubescent. They need to know when they are baligh. And it is an obligation upon a person as soon as they become mukallaf, meaning they've heard the call to al-Islam and they have become pubescent and they are sane. They are not insane. They are not insane. As soon as they become mukallaf, then they have to intend. They have to have the niyat. It is obligatory, it is wajib that they have the niyat, the strong niyat that they will do all of the fara'id, all of the wajib matters, all of the fard matters they will do, and all of the haram matters they will stay away from. This is something that is wajib upon them. This is something that is obligatory upon them, something that they have to do. And today we will stop there, inshallah. Walhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad Rasulillah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam.